Darren Gollehon, Petroleum Consultants.
Out of Billings, Montana, and I always like to get an update from the state of where somebody's located or even where they're at the current time. But you're located in Billings, Montana, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what's the activity like in Billings, Montana in terms of oil activity? I guess not so much Billings, but maybe Montana itself. Are you guys doing much in the ways of Montana, or are you having to go in the neighboring states of Wyoming and North Dakota?
Yeah, we're doing a little bit in the state of Montana, but most of the activity is in the neighboring states of both Wyoming and North Dakota. The eastern Montana Elm Coulee portion of the Bakken took off first, and then the activity migrated over to the North Dakota side afterward.
Are you guys able to talk about any of the locations or any of the rigs and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we see one company drilling right now, or actually two companies out in eastern Montana. Based on the drilling reports we receive, and one company is called Kraken Oil and Gas, and the other one is Denbury. And Kraken's been active out there in eastern Montana, drilling some Bakken wells out there, and then Denbury's got their enhanced oil recovery project, out there in the Cedar Creek Anticline. With that, we still see a lot of potential in eastern Montana. The wells were completed out there in the early 2000s, through 2005, and then still today. But the lion's share of the wells out there were completed with what we would call archaic completion technologies for horizontal wells by today's standards. And so, our firm, we see a lot of opportunity to go into those existing wells and use today's technology to extract more reserves. In addition to that, the professors at Montana Tech have been working on an enhanced oil recovery project, and so they've been looking at Elm Coulee from an EOR standpoint, and how can we inject gas into the formation and recover more reserves that way.
You'll have to keep us posted on that science project going on at Montana Tech. It's always good to hear that some people are drilling in Montana, because you hear so much about North Dakota, and of course Wyoming always has energy going on, especially from the natural gas side of things and coal. But what kind of activity you guys have in the neighboring states? Are you able to talk about anything that's going on in the Wyoming or North Dakota Bakken?
Yeah, we've been active for several clients in both Wyoming and North Dakota, both on the engineering side and on the well site supervision side. We've gotten different projects in-house, and we're actively supervising some hydraulic fracture operations right now as we speak. So, we've been active on both the engineering side, helping operators out with some flare capture, flare abatement. How do we reduce flaring? That's one of the big projects that I'm working on right now. And then, we're doing some gathering system design and helping some operators out with that on the engineering side. And then we've been busy on the completion side of things as well. We made a post recently to get some more resumes in the door, and now we've got a pretty good slate of guys that can handle drilling, completions, and workovers or production type issues.
I got so excited about getting an update from Montana, which, there's not a lot of updates from Montana coming these last few years, so it's good to hear. I forgot to ask you about what it is that your company does. I know that you were doing some of the engineering things, but then you started mentioning supervisor and everything else. So give yourself a little bit of a plug, and what type of services do you guys do there?
Yeah, so Petroleum Consultants is a full-service engineering and operations firm. We could take a project from the permitting phase through the drilling phase, complete the well, monitor the production, and be there for the life of the well, all the way through the plugging. So, we like to look at ourselves as kind of a tip-to-tail, cradle-to-grave type firm, and, we can help operators out with any phase of the project along the way.
You mentioned gas gathering and some of the work you're doing there. Talk to me a little bit further about that, if you would, please. That's obviously a very big issue for the Bakken, as well as some of the other shale plays as well, especially down in Texas. But trapping those those molecules is easier said than done. The cost doesn't seem to be there. I know some of the research centers, whether it be at University of North Dakota Grand Forks, or you mentioned Montana Tech is doing some things. I don't know if they're doing the gas gathering, but it just seems like we're still in that science project phase. How are you guys doing with the gas gathering? Is it becoming economical? Are companies starting to look at it a little bit different? Talk to me further if you would.
Yeah, so we think that flare capture and hydrocarbon gas capture can be economic. We're looking at some and actively using some refrigerant technologies right now that cool the heavier components of the natural gas, and then we're able to sell those components. And then working with a couple different companies to either liquefy the remaining natural gas or compress it, and then use that on drilling rigs or hydraulic fracture sites. We're also talking to different pipeline companies, and if there's a right-of-way issue or a compressor station bottleneck, can we capture the gas, compress it, or liquefy it, and then re-inject it into the pipeline downstream of the bottleneck? So it's an exciting project. It's been very fun. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of new companies out there, and I think it's only going to get better. And I think as an industry, we're going to continue to get better, and we'll see less waste of a valuable resource.
That's where I think the excitement comes. Is I think we're just on the beginning or precipice of the natural gas wave. I think that there's going to be some major advancements in technology that's going to create a whole new industry within the natural gas industry. And I think it's already started on some level, but I think we're just missing that next step. And I don't know if that's a new gathering system or a new way to capture it or what that is. But do you know what I mean by that? It just seems like we're not quite there, but we're almost there with the natural gas to just make it really be robust.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other challenges we're seeing right now is the pad drilling. And, pipelines are designed and it's got a stationary volume. We can't increase or decrease the size of the pipe once it's in the ground. And, as you know, oil wells decline off. And, so we see these pad drilling, pad completions come on with these really big IP rates. And, we've got a lot of gas initially, and then that volume declines off. And so the challenge is designing a system that is economic and can handle those big volumes up front, and how do we capture those volumes and then also still design our infrastructure economically.
One of the stories that's been going on in the oil and gas industry over the past 2 years, and it's, I should say, for the last decade, but it's become very apparent over the last couple years, is the rise of the new worker. The old sling and chains worker just isn't there like it used to be. We're getting a lot more educated workers, whether it be a 2-year trade degree or whether it be a 4-year degree. And I kind of joked that I've seen such a rise of engineers, and I wondered if it was just because the deeper I got into the industry, the engineers were always here, this and that. But then I started realizing the amount of innovation that's going on. And my hunch might be true that we might be seeing more engineers than historically in the past, which really does ripple into new workplace and a new workforce and that sort of thing. I believe that the industry has changed so much to where a lot of people wouldn't even recognize the workforce. If they were Rip Van Winkle and they came out of a 50-year sleep, they'd look at it differently. I don't know that because I wasn't around 50 years ago, but I do think that the workforce has changed quite a bit to where we're a lot more technical and a lot more innovative now. What are your thoughts and what are your opinions on your observations of the workforce in oil and gas over the last, decade or so?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Jason. Like we've got kids that have never experienced life without the internet or Facebook. We've got engineers in the industry right now that have never drilled or completed a vertical well. And, as funny as that sounds, since the history of the oil field started with vertical wells. And in my career, I was fortunate to catch, some of the last wave of vertical wells, but now, the lion's share of wells that are drilled and completed, are horizontal wells in the United States. And since that's the case, it takes more engineers to design and execute these projects. The low-hanging fruit as far as oil reserves are concerned in the U.S. has already been harvested, and so now the projects that we work on today are more complex, they're more technical, and it takes more engineering brain power to solve these problems.
I never thought of it like that before. And the example I used to always give is the publishing world, to where my last couple years, my I should say my first 2 years, my first couple years into the publishing world was like the last years of the light boards, and where they actually laid out the pages before computers took over. And I was always grateful that I had those couple years of the manualness behind the industry, because it allowed me to understand everything going forward. And this interview we're doing right now, if I had to, I can do my own editing, I can do my own writing, I can do my own synthesizing, I can do all of the things that all my employees can do, but they can't do it all like I can. But I relate that to having that kind of that broken down, pull the puzzle apart type of a thing, that knowledge, because I was able to witness it and be a part of it firsthand. With your last couple of years, like you mentioned, do you think that's why you have a very good understanding of this industry?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to get a good breadth of experience over my career, and been fortunate to work on several exciting and innovative projects. And I love getting down into the details. I love understanding the fine details of every project. And it's been an exciting career, and that's just part of what engineers do. They break down the problem into different parts that can be solved individually to solve the greater problem.
I know. I used to joke, because I used to lay out the magazine back in my magazine days, and to me it was like playing Tetris. Just put the blocks together to make it fit, and that's about as breaking it down as it can get. So anyway, let's transition here a little bit. And what's going on next for you guys? Are you guys you guys looking for any business? Do you got enough business to satisfy you for a while? Are you looking at any other new plays, that sort of thing? What's next for you guys?
Yeah, so we feel like we've got pretty good coverage in the Rockies as far as getting our name out there and then recognition, especially on the completion side. We're going to expand, our reach to the drilling side here in the Rockies, but we're looking to grow our company down into Texas and Oklahoma and capture some of the activity in the Permian, and then also the stack and scoop plays. And so we're actively recruiting people that can work for us in those areas, and we're also targeting customers in those areas as well.
Any final thoughts? Anything you want to reiterate? Anything we forgot to mention, or anything that you feel that you should say, I guess, that sort of thing? I'd like to give guests kind of the final thought. That's way there's not a narrative by me, I guess. So floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, as you know, it's an exciting time to be in the oil and gas industry right now, and there's a lot of technology, a lot of innovation going on. We're doing more with less today, and Petroleum Consultants is excited to be right in the thick of it, and we feel like we can add value to the bottom line with our experience. We do a very thorough vetting process with any of the people that we bring on underneath our name, and to ensure that there aren't any concerns when an operator hires us to go to work. So we want to build a quality brand, and we want to be a brand that people can trust and count on.